Today we're going to be working on putting together a roasted potato wedge. And I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to cut this and the importance of cutting it and being consistent with cutting it. And I have a couple of Idaho russet potatoes here. So it's really important to make sure that you wash these at the vegetable sink and then let them dry a little bit. And it's really important to try to pick as much of a uniform potato as possible. The ones that aren't as uniform in size you can use for mashed potatoes, but to get a really nice wedge, we want to make sure we're using ones that are as decently uniform as possible in size. So I want to show you how to cut this. So I have a couple potatoes here. I'm going to move this off to the side, and on my potato, we're just going to cut them into quarters. We want to be as consistent as possible. So you're going to want to take a look at your potato, roll it around a couple of times, kind of gauge it and see the thickness on both sides. And I think I'm liking it on this side. It's a little more flatter for me. I'm going to come in and I'm going to angle it just a little bit this way so you can see the cut. And I'm going to hold my potato up as straight as possible, and I want to find the exact center. And I want to cut through, and I want to make a cut right down the center like so, so I have two equal halves. Once I have the two equal halves, I put one half off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and grab my potato. If I have any dark blemishes or anything, I want to make sure that I take my potato core and get rid of some of these dark blemishes. At this point, I have a half. I can now lay him flat side down, and he's not going to move around on me. And I'm going to move him straight up and down, and I'm going to go ahead and cut him in half again. So I want to double check my angles. I can use the sides of my cutting board to look at the angles, make sure I'm nice and straight. I want to have two equal halves here. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to go straight down to try to get two equal halves. Once I have those two equal halves, I'm going to want to cut another wedge out of them. And the way to cut that other wedge is you can kind of stand him up like so. You're going to have to lean him a little bit. And where you see this top line here of the wedge, you're going to come in and you're going to be a little careful. You're going to have to hold this guy down, and you're going to want to cut from that top line down, and you're going to want to try to cut two equal halves out of this piece as well, and coming straight down. So we have two halves like so. This guy's a little bit thinner than this guy, so I was a little off on that. And it just takes a little bit of practice, and it's not going to be 100% perfect because your potatoes aren't going to be 100% perfect. So I'm going to come in and cut another wedge like so, and there are my other wedges here on those wedges. A half a potato is probably going to be a good portion size for your plate when you're doing a side of roasted wedge potatoes. So I cut those, and those are good to go. So let me go ahead and do this one again as well. I'm going to come in, put flat. I'm going to do two equal halves. I'm going to come down straight, pull them off, flip them over. I'm going to try to find that top line of that wedge, and I'm going to use my fingers to hold the potato down just a little bit, and I'm going to try to cut down as equally as possible on two sides to get two equal wedges. And I'm going to repeat that same process on this guy and come down and do a nice wedge like so. Now, it's really important when you cut your wedges here that you have some water ready to go so that you can throw them in the water so they don't start to turn dark on you. And I'm just going to pull this into the shot here, and I want to show you, we have these nice deli cups and they fit really well, and you can see I have some pre-cut. So I can do my mise en place with the potato. I can pre-cut my potato. I can use a deli cup here, and I can throw my wedges in with water and set this off to the side and then get ready to roast them a little bit later. So now that we have this kind of completed and done, we'll be right back and I'll show you how we're going to season and roast. Now that we have our potatoes cut into wedges, as even in proportion as possible for each wedge, we're going to go ahead and season them. And it's actually a really simple process. I like to make sure there's a little bit of oil in my sheet pan. I'm going to preset my oven at about 400 degrees. We want to have a higher temperature because we want to get some nice caramelization going on our potatoes. So go ahead and set your oven at 400 degrees. I'm going to take just a little bit of oil, and I'm just going to brush down my pan here. I don't want my potato to necessarily stick and pull the flesh off of the one side. So I'm going to go ahead and just season my pan with just a little bit of oil here. Now, same process. I'm going to turn these guys on their side, and I'm going to season them. And I'm going to season them on this cutting board and then we'll just go ahead and wash our cutting board a little bit later. But I want it because I'm going to be flipping them over. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a little bit of oil, and I'm going to brush down a little bit of oil on each wedge here. So I want to make sure I get a nice coating. Set this off to the side. I'm going to take a little bit of salt, and I'm going to season with salt on each wedge. Then I'm going to season with a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. Beautiful. Now, because I seasoned this pan already, and there's a little bit of oil on here as well, excess oil, I'm just going to grab them and flip them over to the other side, like so. We want to make sure we have contacts on the pan on one side of the wedge, because during the cooking process, we are going to flip them halfway over so that we can get both sides nice and caramelized. And it just takes a little bit of practice. So I got my 4 wedges there, and they're seasoned on the other side. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to take a little bit of my oil and I'm going to season the other side of these wedges. And we're going to repeat that same process. Got a nice coating on them. Take a little bit of salt, and I'm going to season on this side as well. Just like that, a little bit of cracked black pepper. Excellent. Let me grab a paper towel here. I'm going to wipe my cutting board down just briefly to get this little bit of mess out of the way. And I just wanted to show you that I have them seasoned nice on each side. Now we're going to throw them in the oven. Your oven's going to be set at 400 degrees. They're probably going to take anywhere, I would set your timer for 15 to 20 minutes. That's not a definite time frame. It depends on how hot your oven is. And halfway through that process, you're going to pull this out and you're going to double check, and you'll flip them over. Once you get a nice golden brown on one side, you're going to flip them over to the other side like this so that you get a nice golden brown on the other side, and you're going to finish cooking them the rest of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and throw these in the oven, and we'll be back in just a few to look at our finished products. So I just pulled out my roasted potato wedges from the oven, and you can see here how I have a nice beautiful golden brown on one side. Now, I've already flipped them halfway through the cooking process, so remember, don't forget to flip them. But I do want to pull one out here and show you that on both sides we got beautiful golden brown. I have a nice crispy exterior and a very soft interior, and that is what you're looking for. So when you stand these guys up, you got these nice, beautiful, roasted, caramelized, crispy on the outside, soft and tender on the inside, roasted potato wedges.